Hello and welcome to Radio Free Nintendo. It is September 4th, 2025. I am James Jones. I'm joined today by Mr. Greg Leahy.
Ahoy, hoy, everyone.
Mr. Guillaume Vayette.
Hello.
And that's it, because John's out this week. It's like we have 1 week where everybody's back, and then we're already out of sync again. This is episode 942, which means we are getting perilously close to 950. Which I don't have any plans to do anything for. Like, guys, we've done 949 of these goddamn things. I'm not going to celebrate 900.
It's too close to the 1,000 now. The millennium is upon us, as I believe Ichabod Crane says in Sleepy Hollow.
Is legitimately terrifying. Like, the thought of it. The thought of there being 1,000 episodes of this bullshit is just unfathomable. And that's canonical episodes. Like there's a whole fleet of non-canonical episodes,
the
unnumbered
NWR
episodes.
chat duology, of course. We can't forget that.
But in a way, like, won't be episode 1001 even scarier? It's going to be like, oh shit, there's actually no ending to this. It can just keep going forever. We'll never be
funnier. What would be
and again, don't forget, when we get past like the early summer, like whenever exactly E3 of 06 was, when the first episode of the then PGC podcast started, like we will be entering the third decade. Decade.
The website didn't even have a name when this podcast started. Well, it did. It had an old name.
Yeah, we kind of knew it had to change because it was Planet GameCube, and the GameCube had already run out of steam. But you know, the launch of Wii was but months away, so it had to happen.
Imagine the SEO if we had Project GameCube or Product Planet GameCube now. Still,
I mean, I would admire the resolve involved in maintaining that.
So stupid.
I think during the Wii U days, it might have helped us actually.
God, couldn't hurt. So what would be funnier? Us stopping at 1001 unannounced. Like, we got there and we took one more step and said, nope, I don't like this planet. We got back on the lander and left. Stopping at exactly 1000 unannounced, which is like, we got there and that's it. We've reached the top of the mountain. I am on Everest. I am looking around and going, fuck, I have to go back down. Or stopping at 999 unannounced. I feel like that's the funniest answer. Like,
no, you just get to 9 and you reset the counter. Is it? We just pretend that it's like a kill screen, or it's like one of those older, like kind of score counters that just didn't have a 4 thing on because people thought, well, no one will play it for that long. It won't rack the score up that high, and so we just reset to episode 1.
Just change it to season 7. Season 7, episode 1. Oh, I mean, the truly most devious thing to do would be to go back and renumber starting at the beginning of every season's. So it's just like, no, I've renumbered. We're only in the 500s now. It's fine. But no, this isn't me saying we're going to shut the show down at 999 for the meme. The funniest thing would be to shut it down at 999 and the next week release NWR Chat 3. That would be the most bizarre, like, in-joke upon in-joke bullshit.
It was a planned trilogy.
It's true. I think George would really approve of our actions here.
So planned. Exquisitely planned.
Oh, yeah. That might actually be the move. Like, legitimately, if you're listening a year from now, it is entirely plausible you will come in after 999 being like, oh yeah, episode 1000, here it comes. And you are met on this feed with NWR Chat 3 just because I think that would be very funny and stupid. But hey, who can say? Because I definitely won't remember I made this vague threat 13 or 14 months from now, so you probably won't either. But we're going to start the show this week, not late next year, this week, the week that we currently reside in. We're going to start the show with listener mail. We haven't done listener mail in a little bit. We did a little bit of listener mail, but we haven't really like dove in a little bit. And we put out a call for listener mail, and instead we were inundated with the additional attempts to get us to use their various podcast servicei, which we are still not interested in, sir. I'm definitely not interested in my podcast services that you offer. But we got some good email. We had some email from our backlog that we were able to go through, so we kind of picked some stuff up. But if you want to send an email, you're asking me, James, is the link on the website fixed? Fuck if I know is the answer to that question. I forgot to look into it this week. But if you want to make sure your email gets to us, there's one guaranteed way. That is to send it to rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. That's RFN, Radio Free Nintendo, if you've never figured that out, at nintendoworldreport.com. It's a website. You can send us your email, and we might read it. I say might because John won't. So I'm averaging it out and say you're going to get like a 0.8% or like 87% read, somewhere in that. It's like John might read it by accident. Like I'm not going to go pure 75. But hey, emails. I'm going to read the first email. I put them in the chat in case y'all haven't noticed. Meowthix Fossil writes, God damn it. This might be a Gee-heavy email for all I know. But in your collective experience, what layman-ass, I'm not a gamer games do you have in your holsters that will get gamers to be in the door in 2025? Don't hesitate to think all the way back to our heyday and cite your drafts with anecdotes. Super Monkey Ball and WarioWare Mega Party games are among my picks for when I raise my Wii's anchor and return to the house of a friend who's done better things with her prime years. That's all I got in the chamber. Love the snow. So, Guillaume, you have some more recent experience with this than me.
So I do have some more recent experience with this because I spent the long weekend visiting an old friend, an old former roommate, and we were like, he lives in Toronto, and that's pretty far, and a lot of driving for very little FaceTime, face-to-face time, even for a long weekend. So we meet up at like his parents' place, who live halfway. But his dad, like his parents are very nice people and they're fun to hang out with. And his dad likes gadgets and got a Switch too. I remember he had gotten a Nintendo a DS Lite back in the day, just to futz around with. And so neither my friend James, another James, and or his dad are like what I would call hardcore gamers, although James is his philosophy has been that like he's told me like he buys the Sony consoles and he buys only the finest, most blockbustery, most graphically intensive and cinematic games that are out there. So he's, I guess, like he's a gamer, but a certain type of gamer that I'm not. So I would say that like it kind of doesn't matter what, like you can't have a one size fits all answer to this question. I feel like you have to really know the person and like play to the audience. Because I severely, like, I had packed my own Switch 2 with all the, kind of zany party games that I usually bring to my in-laws. Because they like to play, multiplayer games around the TV. But, the gadget-loving dad and my friend who's, like, into cinematic or, big-budget games were not that audience. So we didn't really touch on most of my little party games. And like actually like most of the time was spent with me actually playing my friend's copy of Donkey Kong Bonanza, which I hadn't played yet, and it's a very impressive game, and I'm probably going to get it sooner rather than later, but I'm still crossing my fingers, hoping against hope that my library will get the budget to buy one Switch 2 game at some point. I guess I said I would have an answer with this, but I kind of don't. Like what we did actually, because like neither of them had the NSO or expansion pack. we kind of toured the games that are available as on the classic systems. And my friend, like, his first console was the N64, so it was kind of, and he had never played GoldenEye, actually. He was a big Perfect Dark fan, wanted to check out GoldenEye. We managed to make it through the dam level in GoldenEye. It was almost impossible with the default controls on the GameCube not the GameCube, the Switch 2 controller, but eventually I did it on the easiest difficulty. It took me like 10 minutes. It was terrible, but it was pretty fun. And then he proceeded to school me at Mario Tennis 64. Apparently those skills don't atrophy, which is kind of scary.
Nice.
Yeah. And what else did we do? I did check out, so we tried at some point. It was just like Karen and me and my friend's dad. And I was like, okay, what's something that we can all play? And actually, I had recently checked out Tetris Effect Connected. And I saw that there was a 3 humans against 1 CPU mode. And I was like, well, this is perfect. We can check that out. But I don't know what they were thinking when they made that game, but the 3 fields of, playing fields for each person just keep shifting around. Like, they're just like floating out there in the black background. And at a certain point, like, it didn't take long for Karen to be like, you know what, I think this is actually making me sick. We managed to beat the PC for 1 round. And then there were supposed to be 2 more rounds, and but we had to eject before that happened. Then I was listening to the Player One podcast, where CJ, who is actually works at the studio, who works at Enhance, and so has made, that studio has made Tetris Effect Connected. He was talking about their newest game, the new Luminous, and he was telling the other hosts about all the accessibility features that they added to that game, and a lot of them sounded like maybe they would have some equivalent in Tetris Effect Connected. So only too late did I learn that you could make those things stop freaking moving around. It's just somewhere in the options menu. Yeah, anyway, so I guess I don't know it. Did I answer the question? Basically, the long answer short is, know your audience. If you're going to go show something to gadget lovers, maybe, bring your most gimmicky game that you can. If you need to show something spectacular, then bring a game that actually looks spectacular. And I thought that Shinobi would fit that bill, but the 2D graphics apparently don't cut it. They're not, they're just, okay, they're this is like an old game, right? But it looks new, and yeah, I guess so.
I don't actively do this anymore. When I was younger, this used to be a thing I would do. I go to family events and bring stuff, and it'd be the stuff you'd expect. It'd be Smash Brothers. It would be WarioWare smooth moves, things that are more fun to play collectively than they are singularly.
Sure.
But, excuse me. But it really isn't something I do anymore, not actively. Gaming has become much more of just this is a thing for me, and I do it for myself, by myself. I don't necessarily need to bring somebody else in. I did have a kind of experience with this. Not the last time she was here, but the time before my girlfriend visited. Because Legend of Zelda, shoot, I'm blanking on its name now.
Echoes of Wisdom.
Yeah, Echoes of Wisdom had just come out. And so it's the kind of game where you don't have to have a controller in hands to throw things out there to try. So there was some of that, and that seemed like it was engaging, but she already plays games. So that doesn't, I assume she's probably going to be playing Silksong in the near future, probably faster than me. So whatever. But that is the kind of game that you could potentially get people engaged with, because it doesn't necessarily require they handle the controls, but like just the idea, the concept is very approachable. It's very understandable. I had a kind of a similar experience with what was it? With Scribblenauts, actually, which is not a dissimilar game, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Where it was just like people just throwing out ideas of what to use, and that works well. But again, like I've decided that this just isn't really something I'm interested in doing anymore, because you might get some people interested for a few minutes, but odds were pretty good they would, they'd be disinterested relatively quickly. So like, I'm not going to be bringing Ya Bye Girl's Hot Hiker to the next family gathering. No, what can I say? It would definitely cause more conversation, though. That is absolutely positively true. And if that's the goal, well, there's other ways I can cause trouble than the sliding block puzzle of anime girls in the woods. I'm just fascinated by how they're just keep trying to come up with new ideas for these. It's so ridiculous. All right. But yeah, I don't really have an answer to that besides like, I think it's just hard. Like besides the obvious ones, your Smash, your Mario Karts, the things that are built for multiplayer.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing. Like, Karen herself is not super into video games, and like at this point, like if we're not playing something together, she's not really playing anything. Like, she's got her own hobbies. She's got her own stuff to do, and so yeah, maybe it's like better things with her prime years, just like Meowth says, and that's fine,
Yeah, I don't need the people in my life to share my hobbies. Mm-hmm. Like it's cool when they do. Like when my girlfriend and I can talk about games, that's fun.
But sometimes it can be like, if it's a stranger, it can be horrifying. It's like, I don't
people, like, even at work, people are like, "Hey, what games do you play?" And I'm like, "All right, what do I tell them?"
Yeah.
And like,
can we not get into this? How can I do this without showing just how much I actually think about games and play games?
Like, can we avoid me having to reveal that I'm a fucking video game deviant who plays absolutely weird bullshit that you would just stare at me if I tried to explain it to you? Let me talk to you about Disaster Day of fucking Crisis. How about we do that? How about we have that conversation right now? Are you ready for this? No, you'll never talk to me again. And they're like, "Yeah, I played," and then they'll name something and I'm like, nope. Or the other option that happens sometimes, because I do work in technology, is somebody comes in there and just like, "Oh yeah, I play on a private server of Ultima Online that's still around," and I'm like, "What the fuck?" I'm like, "Oh no, I am so out of my depth now. Oh Jesus, run!" But most of my relatives are older now, so like, whatever. The younger ones who I used to play games with, they're either in college or headed there. Like, I'm not going to hang out with them anymore. It's across the point from I'm getting to hang out with my fun uncle versus like, who's this old man? It's like, yeah, no, you're fair. You're right. That's correct. You should feel that way. That is absolutely the correct feeling to be having. So, I don't know. Like, I'm going to make everybody in my family play Egg Console Lord Monarch, a game that can't be played because you don't speak Japanese. I feel like games have been around long enough at this point that people...
If they were going to be into games, they would be.
Yeah. Like, I feel like we've probably hit the saturation point on video games as a product line. Like, I'm not going to get anybody... I'm not going to get anybody who's like blissfully unaware of what video games are at this point. It's like make somebody play My Summer Car or some bullshit. That might actually be kind of fun. I don't know. Like, Kirby might be fun. Kirby in the Forgotten Land's really pretty, and it's really cute, and you might get some people that way, but I don't know that it's going to create an engaging play experience for everybody involved. I don't know, Greg, you got anything?
Yeah, I would say there's a fair amount of overlap for me from what you described, James, in terms of it's not something I ever did very much, perhaps even less so than yourself. I never really felt very confident that, what I perceive to be engaging or worthwhile is shared by anyone else, really. So, yeah, I wouldn't have felt very comfortable making recommendations. And as the years have gone on, I've only got more isolated, more feeling like I don't really understand what anybody feels about anything. So yeah, even less so these days. One thing I would say, the very, very niche example where I kind of felt more just a case of I don't know, maybe this game sort of just missed its moment in terms of, we went through the period where, Nintendo had stuff like Touch Generations, all these various games where they were trying to reach out to, a broader audience and people who weren't regular gamers. I always felt like 3D Picross was actually really quite fun and kind of it did more than just do a digital version of a puzzle,
Yeah, I agree with
that. Whereas I played shitloads of regular Picross over the years myself, but obviously it's very analogous to just doing other similar, algorithmic kind of number puzzles or whatever that you could do on paper or whereas 3D Picross really kind of feels like, no, add in that extra axis and that kind of conceit of you're chiseling a sculpture, and finding a little polygonal sort of model underneath this big block with the numbers and everything. It kind of felt like that could reach more people, but I don't know whether it was the original one was a little bit late in the DS's life to have the reach that some of those earlier Touch Generations games did. And then, of course, there was the follow-up for the 3DS, which had the stereoscopic element, which is a neat thing as well. Certainly, I always thought it was neat. But, a lot of people, just, especially as time went on, just seemed to dismiss it completely. Even people
I liked it a lot.
Even people who did bother, play the platform a lot were just oh, well, you could just have a 2DS, or it's better if you just, conserve the battery life and play with it off or whatever. But I always thought that was actually some kind of engaging kind of embellishment of, okay, here's a pretty, simple kind of problem solving exercise, but we've just, kind of added enough charm and kind of, like I said, that conceit of sculpting something rather than just, solving that problem, that it could maybe have a breadth of appeal. But again, 3DS, that point in its life, and just the 3DS never had the breadth of acceptance as that the DS did, especially in its most white hot sort of phase. So it's maybe you could take that to somebody that likes that kind of problem solving and give it to them, and it's a more vivid version of it. But that's about as far as my very pitiful imagination extends. It is very much the case of, when Bart's trying to imagine the Itchy and Scratchy movie that he's been forbidden from seeing, and Itchy and Scratchy are just there with their hands outstretched oh, mate, I can't think of anything because you can't think of anything.
I find that things that are games but aren't video games, if that makes sense, even shit like Connections and stuff, where just doing them collectively and just talking about it afterwards is more interesting to a lot of people I know who don't play video game, hard video games. I have multiple people I talk about the fucking Scrandle with, which is the most insane shit it's insane. That's a thing that I can do every day, where I just pick one piece of stadium food versus another and figure out which one British soccer fans thought looked more appetizing. But it's, it's just dumb bullshit that's super casual. That's just kind of fun to do. And there might be a little strategy in it, because you can apply game theory to just about anything if you want to. You could try to get into the meta, and realize that Like at some point, I realized that if there was a U.S. flag on the option in the Scrandle, it lost 10 percentage points right there because the voting population is like, nope, don't want that. So green fucking mashed peas, man, gets a much higher rating, and I'd give it every time. Let's do the next email. Guillaume, why don't you read Jared's email?
Sure. Jared writes, "How do you do, fellow podcasters? This question is about how aging has affected your game playing. For reference, I'm certain that I'm above the median age of the casters of this pod, though I'm pretty sure not above the mean. Thanks, John. Anywho, I played DKCR, Tropical Freeze, back when it came out, but bounced off it due to the bosses taking too long. It was a Gamefly rental, and I sent it back quickly. It's a generally well-regarded game, so a little while back I decided to give it another go to fully experience it. I should have stuck with it before, as my already astigmatic eyes... Astigmatic? Where do you put the stress on that?
It's like astigmatism. It's a reference to that, right? But in terms of like astigmatic, I don't think I've ever heard that said aloud. So I wouldn't know where the proper stress is. Like I said, astigmatism, I've heard people say that.
I would say astigmatic, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Isn't that film with Gabriel Byrne and Patricia Arquette or whatever?
I don't know.
It's a stigmata joke.
Yes.
I told you I was on the cutting edge of what everyone's into.
No, you know what? You're right. So, sometimes it's on the listener to not receive the joke correctly. That's fair.
I probably I need to watch more Gabriel Byrne movies. Is something I love Gabriel Byrne.
He's always fun, even if he was sometimes in rubbish. At the end of day, he says a lot.
I will say I watched a Ghost Ship, and
oh god.
That was
Jesus.
tough to watch. I was like,
yeah,
but
it is.
Like, you were in Miller's Crossing. What are you doing here? You know?
No,
the ship is a skull, Guillaume. The ship is a skull.
The problem is Usual Suspects was too successful, and it just seemed like he started getting offers with money that he didn't turn down, and then they were rubbish for a while.
Yeah, Juliana Margulies is in there.
De Niro went through that really nasty phase with like 15 minutes and whatever. It was just like really, Jesus. Like,
I'm surprised you could even name one of those
we
movies.
don't know about.
Yeah.
Anyway. I mean, I don't know how a movie that's poster has a skull on the front of a ship to tell you it's a ghost ship could possibly be bad.
Well, it's just a poster. Actually, the first 5-10 minutes are pretty cool, kind of. That's the one good idea they had for it.
Okay, I guess that's fair.
I can remember what Guillaume's on about. Yeah, it's kind of distended from the rest of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's so bad.
Okay. So Jared still writes, I should have stuck with it before, as my already astigmatic eyes had taken another hit called turning 40. I found myself unable to focus well enough to enjoyably play with everything that was moving, the busy backgrounds and various effects. Are there any notable games that impending geriatricity?
Impending geriatricity.
Impeding it. I'm not going to let old happen. Don't let old happen to you.
That's right. Me and you, James, like the fucking Argonath, just with our arms out. Just no. We're not having it.
We let it get to John. We're stopping it now.
Are there any notable games that impending geriatricity has made difficult to impossible for you to play? Especially something other than slowing reflexes, but it's your answers, of course.
My eyes are still fucking amazing. Best eyes.
I think my eyes are good, but my propensity to just buy the next cheaper TV model has made it so that I never have the right kind of luminosity level, brightness level, and I've complained about how there was who knows in what episode, but I ranted in an episode shortly before Halloween a long time ago. I ranted about Zombie U years after it came out. I tried to get into it, but like I had trouble parsing what I could interact with and what I couldn't, because the game was either too dark or I don't know, like I had trouble like interacting with shit on the screen because it was like everything was either too far for the character to interact with or like too close to properly see, but then finally you could interact with it. I don't know. Like there was something about it, and like I think I complained about how dark the game was, and like someone sent me hate mail about it, like basically like, why don't you shut the fuck up or something.
Nice.
Sick. I've got the zombie defense force, so we all know about it. It was out there.
So there's that, but maybe my eyes are bad too. I did get the laser eye surgery 20 years ago now, and I don't regret it, but they did warn me, like, maybe driving at night will be harder, you'll see halos, stuff like that. That didn't really happen, I don't think, but who knows, maybe I would have, like, awesome night vision if I didn't have, eye surgery back in the day.
You would, if you hadn't had that, you would have gone into the sewer and just bathed your eyes in radioactive waste and become Daredevil by now, so, yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean,
yeah, I think there's a number of reasons why I've gone more and more handheld over the years. The more of my gaming time has been spent playing handheld games, and some of it's just because handheld games have, broadly speaking, from Nintendo, but not exclusively Nintendo. Like, I've had a PSP and stuff, but they've been getting better, right? They've been more capable hardware, more diverse sort of range of experiences that you've had on there. You've had things like glasses-free 3D on there that you wouldn't have in other places, whatever. So yeah, it's some of it's how compelling those experiences have been. Up until, the Switch, where just everything's handheld now, essentially. But also, I think some of it is that and I noticed this when I was relatively young, but like distance from the screen may presumably relating to my eyesight not being that hot over longer distances meant that my reactions weren't as good, right? Mm. It's just like I could play, if I played Mario Golf, for instance, on N64, in my usual armchair in front of the TV, I had the timing down absolutely perfectly. Played it that much, I would barely ever lose a power shot. I was just that locked in. But if I sort of took the machine and hooked it up to another TV or played on someone else's house or something, like, all of a sudden I was further away. It all went to shit, and that's the thing. Well, with the handheld, it's in front of my face. So my reflexes are probably suffered in general, but the specific relationship between if I'm not seeing it as clearly, I don't react as fast. Well, if you stick it right in front of my face, that's less of a problem. So I think that's part of the reason why I've generally shifted more to the handheld side of things. And, that's been something that's helped out playing, for instance, stuff that's more reflex based, like a Tropical Freeze, that I think is 3D World, all that kind of stuff. Really anything with the Wii U, like I would generally tend to do stuff on the off TV play if I could, even the very last level of the game, which is really hard. And the sort of wireless communication there was, kind of had little enough lag to make that viable. But then the other part of it was that, my reactions were going to be better if I was holding it right there. So that's part one. But there is, I think the other part of it is that, in general, I did like to play, and grew up with games that were very kind of challenging at times. Super Ghouls and Ghosts is one we talk about a lot. That's like that was like the first Christmas that we had Super Famicom. It was a big deal getting Super Ghouls and Ghosts, and I'd throw myself at that first level again and again and again all through Christmas Day, But the thing is, I was never good at those games. What I had on my side was patience. Can you guess what I don't have on my side as much?
Well, yeah, that's fair.
I'm not nearly as patient as I was for a number of reasons, right? You don't have as much time to dedicate to things as you did when you was a child. That's the obvious one. But the other aspect is just I'm far more irritable. And I'm sure this is, not entirely uncommon sort of thing, but a modest amount of chronic pain and just generally being more miserable I don't have the patience that I used to for stuff that's like, you know, sort of sticking, you know, two fingers up at you, say no. I can't bash my head back at that with the same kind of persistence as I used to. And like I said, the skills, even if they hadn't, you know, atrophied a bit, which they have, but that's not even the biggest problem, because it was never really skill I relied on. It was sheer just stick-to-itiveness, and that's gone. So yeah, there's a lot more kind of room for me. I've talked about it, you know, getting to like stuff like Kirby a lot more, and I don't think it's a coincidence. It's not only just, you know, giving those things more of a chance, and the number of like really good ones that you know, sort of came out when they like rediscovered the willingness to put the side-scrolling games out again as like major releases rather than like kind of farming them out or just doing remakes. But yeah, stuff like that definitely just goes down better with me these days, because it's just probably better to not give me a reason to put something down now.
I think the bigger thing that has affected me is sometimes more so than even when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I played a lot of slow-paced games. Like that was a thing I just did. And part of that was what systems I had available to me. Or in fact, I did a lot of PC gaming at that point. I found that I get cravings for certain games or certain styles of games more frequently now, whereas as a kid, I just played whatever was on my plate, essentially. So like I pulled out an add-on to a random Total War game from 2011 that I've owned since like 2014. The add-on, not the game. I've owned the game even longer than that. And I just never played it because 2 add-ons came out for that game. And one was like a big giant add-on, and one was like a small retheme, or much smaller retheme. And so I just jumped to the big giant one that changes up the whole game, and then never really touched the other one. Wasn't really on my agenda. But like, I just recently had this urge to play something with that pacing where I just sit there and do like fiddle with things until I'm ready for it to go to the next turn, wait to see what happens, and then slowly play out what I'm doing. I played those games as a kid, but I would usually play them when it was like, this is the thing on my plate right now, and I'd zip through it, I'd have a good time, and that was it. And then the next thing I'd play would be whatever else came up. Whereas now, you know, A, there's just more games now, but B, I have disposable income. Whereas a kid, I got a game when I asked for it and was awarded it for a birthday or Christmas, or maybe they were just feeling generous that day. And even as I got older, I didn't have as much disposable income because I didn't make as much money as I make now. It's just kind of the natural progression of things. But in terms of like the actual aging, like I do think there's probably a mental portion of that, of just like, my brain needs certain things like it needs a diet of this today because it's not that it's not as sharp as it was when I was younger. It's that it doesn't recover the same way when I put it through the grinder. If I have a day where I'm forced to like really push the neuroplasticity, where I have to change topics and maybe I'm dealing with a crisis and dealing with something else at the same time. I have the tool sets now that this is skill versus talent. I have the tool set that I've developed to do those things that I didn't have when I was younger. But I just had the mental stamina and the youth to just be like, fuck it, here we go. Let's go through all the crises at one time. I don't care. And then come home in the evening and be like, I want to play something that absolutely wrecks my brain. Let's do 7.5 hours of Kerbal Space Program until it's 4 a.m. Because that was something I did even into my like early to mid 30s. It was like, yeah, I had the worst work day ever. Now I'm going to go do Kerbal and just try to teach myself, physics in gravitational physics, on the fly using Kerbal and, the internet so that I could do the math that the simulator kept fucking up. And that was fine. I can't do that now. I can't run the engine hot in my brain all day and then go like, I'm going to play Kerbal because I'm going to start that up. My head's going to go, fuck, why? Go to bed. And I'd be like, yeah, I need something that's a little bit gentler, a little bit easier to digest. And some of that might be I have more responsibility now, which is true. But some of it's just, I just get tired. Like, I'm physically in pretty good shape, but like, you know, mentally, like my brain just I can't run. There was a period of time where I could run on 4 hours and have complete mental faculties. That time does not exist 4 hours of sleep. And not like for a day, like repeatedly, bang, 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 bang. That time does not exist anymore. It is not me. And so when I have to like put myself through the ringer mentally, it definitely impacts what I play in a way much more discreet than it did previously.
Yeah, like semi-related to that, like as soon as I started my, career, I stopped playing PC games. Like I just can't do it anymore. I used to be, I used to play the Fallouts and the, StarCrafts and stuff like that. And it's not I just can't sit down some more at the computer again every night. That's just not going to happen. Another thing that I was thinking of while Greg was talking was the, I think because of handhelds, I used to defend weird control configurations like Kid Icarus Uprising and Sakurai, and like, oh, well, you can just like hold the 3DS with, in between your little finger and your
you can
lay it down on your thigh. That was my the coping strategy.
Right. So yeah, I would just like curl my fingers into some sort of claw and like I can just hold it like this, and I don't see the problem here. And of course, like there are some people who with like accessibility issues who could not have done that. And as I get older, I realize I will become one of these people at some point, if I'm not already. Like, wow, that's not just uncomfortable, but like it fucking hurts. And so, yeah, there might be games like that I would not revisit, and I would not defend the kind of the crazy contortions that the game demands of you. It's like,
yeah, well, I think I was kind of on the edge of it when that game came out. You know what I mean? Because obviously you had like Prime Hunters a good few years earlier, would have been 6, I think. And I played that quite a lot and sort of got on with it fine. 3DS was bulkier as a system, so especially compared to a Lite. So it inherently was a bit more problematic. But like I just about coped with it, but I've never really replayed Kid Icarus Uprising and did not play like as much of it as I might have done at that time if it had not had that control scheme. Like I could kind of see the upsides of it and the way the game was designed around it, but it was a bit of a drawback. But like thinking about it now, yeah, I'm much more prone to cramping in my hands these days, so I can only imagine trying to do that the way I did it back then. Maybe I'd have to bite the bullet and use the accompanied, the packed in easel, see how well that goes rather than doing it the same way. Cause, my hands will definitely kind of seize up on me these days.
Can I suggest as a title for this episode, the geriatricity of our city, or maybe the geriatricity of our Kirby?
Yes,
I'll take it under advisement.
I'm kind of seeing that as some sort of linchpin of some dystopian thing where it's kind of like Logan's Run, except instead of people getting sent out of the city to go in the wilderness or whatever, they just put on like hamster wheels to power the city for the rest of their lives.
That movie is amazing, by the way. It's truly I went into that movie completely blind as to what it was, which is absolutely the way to experience that movie. All right, let's do another email, then we'll take a break. Greg, would you read Chad's email
Sure, Chad writes, "Hi guys, I started listening to your interesting podcast about a year ago. I've made it through earlier episodes back to 800-ish. I will make up a statistic and say that in at least 80% of the episodes, there is at least a passing reference to Xenoblade Chronicles. For example, episode 935 at timestamp 8 minutes and 30 seconds. Thus, I propose to you, change your name to Radio Free Xenoblade, and if you don't already own RFX at NintendoWorldReport.com, you should probably get on that. Thanks for all you do to make the internet a place."
I mean, the good news is we own every possible email address that's at NintendoWorldReport.com. So no
sure,
problem.
yeah.
Except,
I was
except
gonna
for
say,
RFX at NintendoWorldReport.com, which is used by, I think, a graphics card manufacturer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's loads. Foreign exchange traders, obviously, if you want to go.
This is the episode where we rambled on about the Konix multi-system for, like, I'm going to say 20% of the runtime of the episode. The funny thing is, like, this going into my new style of writing the article meant I wrote, like, 6.5 paragraphs about the Konix and why it is the way it is. Here's the idea of where. Well, no, we talked about Bonanza at the 2-minute mark, and then oh god, all right, we talked about Bonanza at the 2-minute mark. Something happened, and then we talk about Mario Kart World at the 57-minute mark. I see, and that's not when the Konix comes up. So somewhere in there, we talked about Xenoblade. I mean, look, it's Xenoblade's an important game from a historical standpoint. Do we talk about Xenoblade too much?
I don't think so. I mean, like, they come out every once in a while, and then they get remastered, or
they get
what's the word that they use?
Definitive edition.
They get definitived. That's like a really shitty Terminator knockoff on VHS.
And they get, the extra content, and we don't always play them all at the same time.
That's true.
At some point, I am sad to announce right now that at some point I will get around to playing Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Like, I bought it. I bought many games, but this one I will actually get around to playing at some point.
It's very good.
I swear.
It'd be nice if they did something with it to maybe bump it up for Switch 2 in some description, but
I need to get it started and finish it before they announce the fucking definitive edition.
Right.
That's all I need to do.
I mean, they might, I guess. It was obviously much, much more acceptable from a technical point of view than 2 was.
2 is a disaster.
2 was a very special case with the fact that it was going to be in the first year of the Switch, and a lot of the work was done seemingly before they had a handle on what the system was actually going to be.
2 is special in so many ways.
I don't know the full story by any means, but certainly it seems like there were a lot of circumstances that would have made it challenging. That obviously years later, and having already done the definitive edition of the first game in between, lessons were learned and things are much better on 3. Although, as I've already said before, I still feel like X definitive edition feels like finally like we're at a really satisfactory place.
Yes,
with the series on the Switch hardware, just as it was saying goodbye. But I guess it's not out of the question that something could happen like as an upgrade or a non-paid update, or, there's various options that we've already seen. So it'd be kind of nice if that world could look, a bit sharper, because it still is a bit soft. Not necessarily always, Xenoblade 2 soft, and certainly more stable and, sort of well put together than that game was, and more navigable, perhaps more important than any of the visual things. But, I would say, as however much talk about Xenoblade, we've been hanging on to that RFX for years because we've been waiting to launch Radio Free Xbox. And what better time than now? I mean, the momentum behind the Xbox platform has never been more positive. I think now is the time for us. Maybe everyone else is getting off. Maybe we should get on.
I mean, it's basically going back to our Wii U years. We'll fill that niche.
We'll fill the niche. It's fine. We can do it.
We could just like read off, old like forum comments if those are still up and around, where we just say they just say shit like Microsoft should buy Nintendo. Why doesn't Microsoft buy Nintendo? Etc.
Do we own Donkey Kong yet? Now that we've bought Rare, all the good
stuff. Oh my god!
Nintendo is doomed. Xbox is the future. I'm not bitter.
It's been
time
3
well
years.
spent on the IGN boards.
It's been 3 years since I originally posted they should buy Nintendo, and they have not yet bought Nintendo. What's up with that? I say we talk about a broad diversity of games. I'm going to defend that this show is an educational product. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say this show teaches you things. Does it teach you good things? Who can say? Good is not a scientific term. We don't evaluate things.
I've from a very reliable source that good is a point of view.
It's right. Yeah. We follow quantitative measures here. We teach you many things. There is a lot of content that we put into your brain. You can thank us by sending us an email to rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. Boom! I nailed that transition. Nailed it. A+.
If we just keep saying RFX enough, can I poison you to still say that?
No, because I'm not John Lindemann, who doesn't know the email address, despite being on the show for coming on 20 goddamn years.
Yeah, but that's like trying to poison a well that's entirely dry. It doesn't really work.
It's like trying to poison a well that's full of poison, and people are wondering why it was built here. Why did we tap into this poison aquifer? Fuck. I got fucked myself up on that one. I think we're going to take a break here, but we've still got a decent amount of email, and we've got a little bit of new business. I think we can do one, maybe two more emails, and then we'll do... Greg and Guillaume have some new business that we'll get to. So we'll take a break here. We come back, we'll pick up where we left off. We return, and I promised you we'd do a couple more email. We're going to do a couple more email. And I will read the first of the couple more email that we intend to do. This is from TJ, who writes, "Hey RFN, congratulations on 900 episodes." All right, this is an older email.
Yeah, it was originally like at the end of last year, and then we had a sort of request to revisit. Exactly.
Yeah. But my topic today follows some discussion around Astro Boy and how that character might be Sony's new mascot. It's obvious why Crash...
Astrobot, right? Astro Boy is the vintage manga.
That would be a lawsuit problem. Astrobot and how that character might be Sony's new mascot. It's obvious why Crash isn't seen as such anymore. But what happened to Ratchet, Jax, Sly, Sackboy, and the other characters who represented the brand through the years? Why do companies struggle to successfully juggle multiple family-friendly mascots like Nintendo does? Microsoft still hasn't even found one. And when they try, the character fizzles out before they even begin, like Blinks or Lucky. Fuck. I forgot about Lucky. Jesus. Looking forward to your thoughts as always. Thanks.
Microsoft maybe bought the biggest one, Minecraft Steve.
That's true. But then they didn't make it, they don't treat him like a mascot. They treat it like True. Minecraft Steve. Minecraft is almost, like, it is part of the Xbox brand, but they market it very autonomously.
Yeah.
And it's everywhere. So I get why. But I mean, a lot of the other stuff that's on the Xbox brand is everywhere as well. Such as those companies still exist in the current state of affairs at Microsoft. But you're right. I mean, like, Steve could be it. They just chose not to use it. And I think that's probably the answer, is that Sony broadly chooses not to have a mascot. And it's like they used Sackboy internally and externally for a lot of things. But Sackboy's not very interesting, ultimately. I mean, that's sort of the point. It was meant to be basically a stand-in, a proxy for an actual character design. And what they would do is they would layer designs on top of it. Almost like a placeholder character in your Kirby is the placeholder character narrative. But I feel like a big chunk of it is the idea of the mascot character is a bit passé. Not that it can't work, but if you think about Nintendo's use of mascot characters, it's Mario. It is to the extent that they are legally allowed to, as per the ownership and relative trade dress agreements, your Pikachu. But again, that is constrained by their contractual obligations with the Pokemon Company. It is, in some cases, they have leveraged some Animal Crossing stuff. I think that's probably going to get there a little bit. It's not Kirby, even though Kirby is marketed to hell and back, because that's technically not their character. That's the weird partial ownership thing. Mm-hmm. But it's good enough. It's good enough because the average person doesn't associate it with HAL. They don't know who the fuck HAL is. They associate it with Nintendo. So even though Nintendo may not be doing, well, I can get to that in a second. Nintendo is not the one who was driving that bus. They still sort of get to reap the benefit of it. But it is Mario, but that's a relationship that was established 30 years ago, realistically. 40 years ago? Like we're getting up there now. And I don't know how much of it is Sony can't versus Nintendo can feed off the momentum of it already being a thing. Like, they haven't really created new mascot-y characters they use in a mascot context. Like, is there anyone they've created in the last 20 years? Like, they've definitely created characters, but even they aren't really making new franchises with mascotable characters out of them. You think about the franchises that, like, arguably you could maybe use an Inkling as a mascot.
Or an Animal Crossing character, like anyone that they put in the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
Yeah, but like they don't really market them with those. They make plenty of merch for those characters, but they don't really use them to market the idea of the mascot is it's marketing something bigger than the games it's in. It's marketing the platform.
I mean, that's the thing. When some of it maybe it's not that great to really get into semantics for ages, or you can put something of a limit on this. But what do we mean when we say mascot? I mean, certainly when I was young, one of the things that really distinguished mascots to me and Mario in particular as a mascot was just like how omnipresent he was. Right. And that means not just like, oh yeah, those, Super Mario Brothers games are a big deal. And there's, loads of advertising for Super Mario Brothers 3 and it sells a load of copies or whatever. And there's a cartoon or any of that stuff. Eventually the Super Mario Brothers movie, in the 90s one. But also, like, he's everywhere. He's like the referee in Punch-Out. He's like in all these different kinds of games. We get Mario Kart, Mario Golf, and tennis, all sorts of things, right? So like that really was kind of the most broad kind of thing for the mascot, is like this guy represents the brand in general, and therefore he can kind of be applied in, Mario Paint. It's an art program with a mouse and it's got Mario on it. Like, it was like, when in doubt, sell it like this. Like Super Mario Kart didn't start as a Mario branded thing, but it became one because it just, as they were experimenting with different things in the development, it just evidently kind of made sense to them to like put some of these sort of trappings on there. And of course, some of it, because of the ways in which Nintendo succeeded in these various endeavors, and some of it may be just because of the natural kind of desire to knit things together and create some sort of coherent brand identity. Sonic with Sega, who, they had a bit of a journey to arrive at Sonic, right? Like, they had a whole generation, and kind of a generation and a half, with the whole SG-1000 versus Master System thing. The SG-1000 was their first kind of home console platform that debuted at the same time as the Famicom in Japan. but then they did a sort of subsequent iterations of it, and then you get, you know, the Master System in the West. And during that time, it's like, okay, you know, maybe, you know, Wonder Boy is going to be the mascot, right? Maybe Alex Kidd is going to be the mascot, or maybe Opa Opa from Fantasy Zone is going to be the mascot. Like they were trying different stuff, and they didn't really seem like they arrived at something. And then, you know, I think Sonic from the beginning was an attempt, but it might not have succeeded to the extent that it did. But when that got some traction, it's like, okay, this is it. You know, the way we was packing stuff in with Altered Beast before? Yeah, that could go. And we'll pack it in with Sonic. And, you know, we'll have Sonic Spinball, and we'll have Sonic 3D Blast, and we'll have all this different stuff. Sonic the Fighters. You know, like stuff that's got nothing to do with the basics of, you know, Sonic
Mega Man had the same run, even though there wasn't a platform for it, but Capcom was using it as the mascot.
Yeah, it's the point is, like, that to me is where you reach mascot status, right? Where it's like you're just kind of getting things that, you know, barely even make any sense in some ways, but it's like, no, this character is so kind of emblematic of our brand, and, you know, the image we want to put across and the appeal that we can generate, that we will try it on a bunch of different things, and it's just like the tip of the spear, right, for everything we want to do with a platform or a given, like, initiative. And so that's quite a high bar. That's kind of tough to reach. And so maybe it shouldn't be a terrible shock that, you know, some of the Sony and Microsoft haven't necessarily ever quite had anything like that. And I guess the other thing is that, as you say, James, I think you already really hit this. As the industry matured, the sort of perceived need for that diminished, right? Because there was a literally more mature player base to sell to that would be less swayed by these sorts of marketing endeavors, right? It was less about characters and more about the kind of experience, maybe the, you know, kind of perceived sophistication of the experience, or, you know, how it reviewed, or just like the production values, whatever it might be. It still could be susceptible to marketing. It's not like we're saying, oh, there's nothing that you can do to sway these people anymore, but it's different types, right? And so, especially Xbox, like, a lot of their appeal of, like, you know, oh, hey, we're the most powerful, we've got a hard drive, or, you know, all these kinds of things that they were kind of pushing with the original Xbox. That kind of crowd they were appealing to, it didn't really overlap very well with the ones that would respond to a mascot. So any of the
didn't try.
Yeah, so they did try at the same time, but I mean, they made it. I would say it was outright at cross purposes with the other things they were doing to try to try and market the platform, that weren't mascot based. But, you know, it was tough. Like, it wasn't a good fit. And, you know, really, like, Sony certainly had the breadth of, like, the market share that they could have more plausibly hit on, you know, sort of successful mascots. And they had some that functioned a little bit in that capacity for a while. Like, yeah, Crash was mentioned, you know, that wasn't like theirs necessarily.
But they didn't own Crash.
Yeah, exactly. So that limited it in that sense. And, you know, Sackboy later. But again, like, when you get to Sackboy, the PS3 generation, you know, 360 serious competition, the Wii's got its segment of the market kind of locked down. So, like, the whole, like, PS3, like, you know, again, what was the marketing appeal of PS3? Like, it's like, okay, we've got Blu-ray, we've got the, you know, sort of the cell processor, it's unbelievable, or something.
This thing has two HDMI on it. Two HDMI ports.
It's not really very much overlapping with the kind of appeal, the kind of marketing pull that we associate with mascot characters. So it just, the ground wasn't that fertile in a kind of post 16-bit era for some of these kinds of, you know, kind of companies and things, which is not to diminish, you know, I think
the mascot for the PlayStation 3 was the giant enemy crab, and of course, Ridge Racer.
Yeah. I mean, and to build on what Greg is saying here, like, you can go look at attempts to do it often feel very ham-fisted as well. you can look at characters who were created to be the Mario of their company, not even necessarily a console manufacturer. These could be publishers who would like to have a character that audiences associate with them on site, so that they could put that character in or on games. So maybe that character's not even in the game, but it's on the box. It's part of the logo. It gives them a brand identity that can be leveraged for essentially cheap marketability, for lack of a better word. And so you have this weird, like, we talked about it in the 90s. There was that weird cycle of Sega creates Sonic to be everything Mario isn't. Which, whatever. Crash is just Sonic created 10 years later. I hate to tell you that, but
I mean, one thing that kind of, sticks out to me in a number of ways, I guess, is just like, it's the influence of, like, and these things end up eating each other, right? The snake eating its own tail, like, in the sense, like, Sonic, like you said, they package because the whole essence of the mascot is so bound up in marketing. The marketing that went with Sonic, as you say, is all about, Sega's about speed, so much faster than Mario, so much more, kind of dynamic. This is what we're selling. And so, like, Donkey Kong Country was Nintendo's big response to that in a lot of ways, right? Like, because it's like, okay, it was a response to a lot of things. It was a response to, the idea that there were, more powerful systems coming onto the market, and we need something that can kind of give us a sense of advancing, even if it's still on the Super Nintendo, because the N64 was still, it was meant to be months away, but it ended up being like 18 months away, rather than just a few, as it got delayed from 95 to 96. But, DKC in that sense obviously is one way of, like, we're pushing back, we're saying we've got attitude as well, we've got advanced graphics as well, whatever, just buzzwordy, the whole buzzword bullshit of that time is just like, I was aware of it at the time. It's not like I was young, but I was aware of the feeling of just like, okay, this is how they're choosing to market it versus what it actually is. But, like, especially some of the American ones that I didn't necessarily like,
64 bits. It's like,
I wouldn't have seen it on TV, right? Because, that I wouldn't have had access to American broadcasts at that time. And it's like, I think they market Yoshi's Island with, like, Morphmation is the term. I mean, it's like, what the fucking bollocks is just absolute turbo shit. But
we would never do that now with HD 2D or anything like that.
Well, yeah, look, marketing is still marketing, right?
HD Rumble.
We might all be more veterans of it,
HD
right?
HD Rumble 2.
But it's still quite nonsensical quite frequently. But that stuff like that obviously is an outgrowth of, like, blast processing, which was complete distortion of, like, there was some kind of weird, like, edge case thing that the Genesis could do, where it could just, like, flash up a still image that had, like, way more colours or way higher resolution than the default display, that had basically zero applicability to any game that would be released commercially. And somehow they turned this into, this is what makes the games run faster. I mean, it was bullshit. It was complete bullshit. But at a certain point, Nintendo got wise of, like, well, we'll fight bullshit with bullshit. Turn into fucking Dennis Green here, but that is what they did. And so these things kind of went in circles, and DK was, like, fighting back against Sonic, and that was a game that was more about kind of, not necessarily the raw speed, because it was still, the Super Nintendo had a slower processor than the Genesis. There was some truth in that, at least. But, that was their way of fighting that. And then Crash is like an amalgam. It's so influenced by DKC. I mean, I still haven't played any of the Crash games. When you look at it, it is very much like, what if we take DKC and turn it, into some very literal, like, polygonal 3D versions where you're going into the screen or whatever. Like, but yeah, in terms of the character design, being this kind of, anthropomorphic animal thing,
what if Sonic listened to REM is what it is. It's
so, you know, yeah, I know what you mean. Like, a lot of the times, especially when Sonic proved fruitful, like, they proved they could do it, whereas Mario was a little bit more by accident. Sonic was very much like, this is what we've tried to more organically hit on something, and it hasn't really happened. Let's really go for it, and it worked. Then it becomes like everyone else is trying to re-engineer that process with some pretty inelegant sort of methods. And yeah, you had so many. And but then that in itself became a stigma, right? You know, there became a stigma around, especially 2D platformers, because that was like, so many games are 2D platformers in the 16-bit era. And it's like all these games where people are starting with a 2D platformer and then thinking, we'll put it in a kart racer next, we'll put it in a fucking pinball game next, whatever. And so, yeah, that it was something that I guess people got wise to a degree as it went on, and that made it harder for people to repeat, you know, what Sega had done. I mean, you talk about Pikachu. I mean, that was like a bit of a strange journey in itself, right? Oh, yeah. Like, I don't think when they drew the 151 that Pikachu was like, this is the one. This is, we are going to hinge everything on this.
Not originally, no.
Pre-evolution of Raichu. Like, it obviously the anime had a huge amount to do with that. But like, even the anime is like, it's quite slightly revised sort of design from like, because he's a lot chubbier and stuff in the original art, isn't he?
Yeah, I can't remember. There was a Pokemon they thought was going to be the one, and I'm blanking on what it was. And in retrospect, thinking about it, I'm like, what the fuck? That would never have been the one. But I'm you know, this is hindsight is 2020. Yeah, like they created 151 of these things, and that was the one that caught on. And you're right, the anime had a role in that, but I would guess they were already cognizant of the fact that that was going to be the one when they gave Pikachu such a starring role in the anime. That it is the most enduring Pokemon in the series by not any, like, orders of magnitude. Like, I would assume they made that choice because the marketing team had already told them, like, no, you need to market this one.
Yeah, I assume that obviously there was, I mean, it was pretty fast, the anime getting started in Japan, but the game had gone on sale and started to gain, you know, remarkable popularity. And I assume they had actual feedback at that point rather than just their projections of what they thought, you know, people would latch on to among those many designs. Yeah. But and then of course it becomes something completely unto itself. But that's the point. It's like there's a little bit of an organic quality to that, and there was a little bit of an organic quality to Mario, you know, the sort of very functional nature of his design, just because, you know, the sprite work had to be so limited that's why he's got a hat and a mustache, just to distinguish, you know, the fact that, you know, hair is tough to do, and to distinguish his, you know, nose and, you know, from his chin or whatever, you know. So, like, there's this, it doesn't feel as, like, focus grouped, poochied, you know, a lot of this stuff in the mid-90s.
Poochie is explicitly a commentary on this shit.
Yeah, and it wasn't exclusive to video games, right? Obviously, that's the context of, like, cartoons having new characters, or presumably also, you know, cartoons that were launching with new characters, that they were looking to not just, you know, to have this cartoon be popular, but we want to put it on everything. We want to put it on lunchboxes. We want to put it in, you know, spin-off properties, toys, everything you could think of, right? So it's just like that whole thing burned so hot in the mid-90s that I do think it made it harder afterwards. It kind of, you know, I don't want to say completely salted the earth or anything, but it was a problem, wasn't it?
It's more, normally when you say salted the earth, it's a reference to deliberately destroying the fields. This is more,
it was they
irrigated with brackish water and eventually salted their own fields by accident.
They overdid it, but everyone thought they could do it, right? You know, and that it just kind of created.
That's how you end up with, like, Dizzy and I mean,
I think they're a bit earlier though, aren't they? The British kind of stuff, like they
not that Disney. Sorry, the other, but that is relevant here because it's the same kind of thing. They stumble into Disney, who is nothing, honestly. Like I don't even. It's there's not much to that character design.
Again, that is like another one of those like Kirby it's a Kirby or Mario type of thing, isn't it? Where it's like you've got really limited graphics. Like, what can you do with
and then this? They make like 100 of these things.
So that's the thing. That kind of stuff, though, it's like on the one hand, it's like it's got this sort of modesty of the tools of the time about it that just kind of makes it feel less cynical than what came later. And I think that is what the cynicism and the impression are just like. It's really how like out of vogue like 2D platformers went as well. I think that went, just like how Nintendo like didn't seem that bothered about putting out original Mario games for so long. Like just the backlash against the 2D platformer and the accompanying kind of mascot characters that were designed for them. It was so potent. The gold rush was so intense that it just created this backlash against it that lasted for a long time. And really you could say, probably about 10 years afterwards when you start getting like New Super Mario Brothers, on DS, and that's a big deal. Really starts to turn it around, even for Nintendo. Like, yeah, actually, God, these can not just be like compliments to our big, releases, 3D Mario, Super Mario Galaxy, or whatever, one they're up to at a particular moment, but they can be bigger. It can be because it is more universal. It's simpler. It can appeal to a broader player base, and they had to rediscover that after this kind of relatively lean period. And then you get the weirdness of like the 3DS. And I know we've said the 3DS had to stretch its life out, longer than was intended, right? Because of what happened with Wii U. But like then all of a sudden it's like everybody's getting a 2D platform. Pikmin's getting one. Chibi-Robo's getting one. It's like
fucking Ziplash.
Where is this coming from? That it's like now we're back. Like we went through a period where like Mario, the guy that we associate most with his genre, couldn't have an original one for all those years, and then we get to that period, and we've got Hey Pikmin and Ziplash, and obviously many Kirby games on 3DS that were side scrollers. New Super Mario Brothers 2, all these things, Yoshi's Woolly World, Yoshi's New Island.
That's right. There's 2.
We've chilled out on that now. Have we? Again, a lot of it wasn't like, I don't know when necessity is quite the right word, but it kind of lent itself to that because it's like they were having a hard time.
What can we give Suzak to make and not be scared?
You're outsourcing stuff. You got to find ways of like, okay, what can we put these characters in that people have got some sort of knowledge of or attachment to, and kind of use them in this period where top tier development assets are needed in very different places. I guess that's just what happened there, but it's a weird cycle of how you kind of like stay the hell away. You burn really hot, then you stay away from it, then you go way down the rabbit hole again, and now we're kind of just back to. It feels like more of a like all normal balance now of like, 2D sky scrolls, they could be good, but like we don't have to put every character in one.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to actually call it on email because there is some new business I want us to get to. So why don't we go ahead and we got 2 emails we didn't get to this week. We'll pick them up hopefully next week. But I'm going to let Guillaume go first because he has the newest new business.
I had the newest new business. Now it's gone. It's behind me. I'm done with it. Well, it's a Shinobi Art of Vengeance.
Oh, okay. I thought you were telling me you weren't going to talk about it because I'd offend you or something. And I was like, why?
No. It's just that I absolutely devoured that game. I just could not stop playing. Not because of any nefarious gotcha, one more turn kind of thing, but because it was so damn good. I don't know. Like, I just needed to see what was next. Shinobi Art of Vengeance, the latest Shinobi game from the people at Lizard Cube, who made one of the greatest of all time, Streets of Rage 4, which I've played hundreds of hours of during the pandemic, mind you, with Karen, but still, I guess I'm a fan of their work. And I played the demo, a couple of weeks ago, and like I would have talked about it in the last podcast, but then like we were running out of time. I had already bought the game, so there was no real point in talking about the demo. But the demo seems to have turned off some people off it. Like either they thought it was like too difficult, they couldn't really, come to grips with what the game required them to do. I would say to those people, maybe give the demo another shot, because like there was this weird thing where in the demo I tried a little bit and struggled to do the execution move, which is just basically like there are certain, maybe I should explain some of the systems in the game, but like there was this move that's kind of a little bit hard to set up. But once you do, it's very easy to accomplish. You just like press the L button and then the right button, the R button, and your Shinobi just goes around and slashes everyone and kills them in one hit after you've weakened them down. And the game said, well, like the more of enemies you kill on screen at one time, in one go, the more rewards you get. Like you just get like you just start. The enemies explode in tons of coins and extra kunai for you to throw and health and stuff like that. And then your character just hoovers all of that up. So it sounds like it's beneficial to do that as often as possible. And I struggled to do it because the enemies would just, die before I could get the signal that I could perform that move on them or whatever. But then, like in the 5 days or so between the time that I played the demo and that I started the full game, 5 days where I didn't touch the demo, something must have clicked in my head because I was doing it fairly easily right away, right off the bat. And I had, like the demo level is the first level of the game. And so if you've played the demo, the first level, like you go through it so much faster, so much quicker. So I would encourage people to maybe give it another shot. Like maybe I just needed the controls to percolate in my head a little bit or something. Just needed a little bit of time. But like I find that the game controls very well. It is very precise. I usually find that like you want your ninja to do a move and he does it. Like there's no fuzziness about the controls. There's no how do you say this? I don't know. Like there's no like fuck me. I almost had the word. In Mario 64 when you try to turn around and he doesn't turn around quite yet? There's an inertia. Inertia. That's the word I'm looking for. Our ninja
I would have never
has
gotten
no
there
inertia.
from your description. I would have never gotten there from that.
Right, but I'm just saying, like, if you press a button, you get an instant reaction. He's got, I guess, ninja reflexes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so that's reflected in the gameplay. He can turn on a dime. He's a ninja. Mario's a plumber.
Twitch fiber.
Yes. So the controls are impeccable, in my opinion. And the demo, of course, allowed you to explore more of the first level than you can initially in the full game. Like, one of the first things you unlock in the demo was the, what am I thinking of now? There's a move, basically. Yeah, like the kind of where you just press down and press the strong attack, and you just dive bomb downwards, straight down, and that can break some barriers, some doors or whatever. It takes forever to actually unlock that in the full game. So in the demo, really, like they were giving you more moves right away, and like they allow you to do more of the challenges that normally you reach much later when you're playing the full game. And maybe again, like that plays into this perception that this is like an impossible game, because in the demo, there was like this portal that led you to a platforming challenge that was fairly hard. Like you are going from platform to platform, suspended in the air. If you die in the void, you only lose some health. But because the game is generous that way, there are a few instances of actual instant death. Fire will kill you instantly, and some lasers, but that's about it. If you fell into a pit, you reappear on the last platform that you had both feet on, basically, and yeah, in that challenging platforming section, there's also like tons of circular saws just moving up and down and left and right, and like it's all about timing, all about precision platforming, and that's one of the harder of those challenges, really. Like the other ones where you enter through a portal and they ask you to do something that's seemingly impossible to do are actually much easier. So again, yeah, I think that contributes to this perception that this game is really hard. But I found that the difficulty of this game is just right for me. And that makes me question, okay, like was, Shinobi the hole that was exactly for me, it was way more for me, or if it's not that tough of a game. And I feel like maybe the team did manage to make like a new entry in a series of really tough games, in my opinion. Like, I didn't grow up with Sega, and like whenever I try Shinobi 3, I hit walls pretty quickly, left and right. Like they're very exacting, they're very demanding. They require a lot of precision, and you don't get a ton of health to play around with. Like they're tough games. But Shinobi Art of Vengeance is, I find, kind of on the easier side. Like it's a new entry in a classic franchise with the reputation for being tough. That's actually a lot more approachable, a lot easier than anything that came before it. Like they didn't succumb to the idea that, well, people want to be eating shit when they're playing this game, because in previous games in the series, you ate shit all the time. So it's not like that. I find that if you've played through the kind of the optional, the bonus sections of Super Mario Wonder, you can tackle what's in here, basically. Super Mario Wonder might have been tougher. I don't know. There was one optional section in the last level that gave me a lot of trouble, but I feel like maybe it's because I wasn't quite doing the right thing at a certain point, and so I died a whole lot more than I was supposed to. But yeah, anyway, like in general, even the challenging platforming sections that are hidden behind portals that are meant to be really, to scare the shit out of you, sometimes I would pull them off in one go, because they were all about kind of like hitting the right momentum, and they played almost more like one of those music levels of in the Rayman Legends or Origins than they played like a precision platformer, if you know what I mean. Like it was just about hitting the right button at the right time.
Right. It was more timing and oriented than anything else. Yeah,
and like the game, like every time that you dash forward, the dash is always going to be the same length. Every time that you use your grappling hook, like there are these points where you can use the grappling hook and you will just like pull yourself towards it. Like the game always sends you on the same trajectory. Like it kind of looks like, because of the way that they designed the UI with it, like it looks like maybe the angle from which you are going to grapple the hook is going to change where you're going to be ejected, like where you're going to be sent, where you're going to fly off. But actually, like it's kind of at a set, pretty much 45-degree angle, up into the opposite direction from where you came from. So there's nothing really that leaves you guessing, you know. There's no kind of physicsy kind of weird stuff going on. Like it's very precise again. Like they give you the tools that you need for this precision platforming. Yeah. So yeah, I realize like I probably sound very like defensive saying that this game is actually not that hard and yeah, but like that's kind of the reaction I saw online, and I guess I just want to reassure people like, no, you've got the wrong idea. It's very approachable. Please check it out because it's really fucking awesome. And if it does turn out to still be a little bit too challenging, I went into the options and you can customize so many things about the difficulty. You can turn the enemy health way down to 50%. They can do half the damage. They can hit less often, which I think would be like a pretty big accessibility feature if they just stand there waiting for you to kind of whittle away their health. You can make environmental damage lower. There are all sorts of stuff like that you can play with. The game looks awesome, of course. Like it's got that hand-drawn look that Lizard Cube is known for, I guess, now with Streets of Rage 4. You know, like it's all hand-drawn kind of cell animation. I don't know. But yeah, like, so it looks really, really pretty. It does look worse on the Switch 2 screen because of the kind of the scaling that's happening, because this game is a Switch 1 game. It is hand-drawn, and the sprites all have this fine kind of pen outline to them. And that doesn't really do well with the kind of scaling that the Switch 2 is doing. And so it really becomes jagged. So that's unfortunate. But the few times I was playing the game on the Switch 2 screen, that disappeared for me very quickly. And like this issue doesn't really affect the backgrounds. It's really just the sprites because of that outline. But the backgrounds still look freaking amazing. And so there's still a lot of kind of eye candy that's not altered because you're playing on the Switch 2 screen. Greg was telling me on the before we recorded that even the Switch OLED, like it was still not quite great because
it's much less noticeable on Switch. I played the demo a little bit on both, right? And I'm generally just keeping my Switch OLED to hand to play side-scrolling stuff, right? It's just with that motion clarity that it's got. It's really nice for side-scrolling games, and especially not through the backwards compatibility, so you avoid some of these scaling issues. What I noticed playing it on the OLED is it seemed like the kind of assets were probably designed for a higher resolution than what it's running at on Switch 1. So you kind of, it's being scaled down a little bit, and it's not quite as like, kind of crisp as it would look as it's ideally presented, right? Presumably if you're playing it on, a PS5 or whatever.
Right.
But it looks fine. But then,
I mean, on the TV, on the Switch 2, it looks great.
Like and on the TV as well. Whereas the thing is, if you take that's like a little bit off on the OLED, and then you add the Switch 2 scaling to it on the Switch 2 screen, then it's just, it looks wonky. It doesn't look right. Yeah. But they've already, I believe, Lizard Cube have already said a patch is in the works for a higher resolution option, at least. I'm not exactly sure what we're looking at there in terms of whether it's going to introduce new options or whether it'll run higher by default or whatever. But it sounds like something is coming that could deal with that if anybody is finding it to be a particular problem. Of course, it does raise the question, right? Well, if this was possible, why wasn't there an option to run it at a higher resolution before? But you've got a few different scenarios with that in terms of, first of all, it may be simply a function of the development schedule, especially with releasing across multiple platforms, that this was just not something that they could really justify prioritizing until now. And the other question, I guess, might be, if it is an option, it might be something where you can engage that higher resolution and it might potentially incur some frame rate penalties. But I guess, like, if you were to play it on Switch 2, it would be less likely for those to actually happen, because we know Switch 2 back compat can kind of smooth out some of those, frame rate issues now and again, if it's not something that's hard capped. So who could say exactly? But and the possibility, perhaps in the future, like that there could be a particular Switch 2 upgrade or separate edition or whatever. I mean, we're kind of waiting on some of these things for a number of games, it feels like, because it doesn't seem like Switch 2 dev kits were that available to a lot of people. So you've got stuff coming out where it would have seemed natural, perhaps, that they would have something that would reflect, the realities of the Switch 2 being on the market at this point, where they don't have like performance things that take advantage of the Switch 2 hardware. Like a bigger thing, I think, probably than this image quality idea is Ragebound Ninja Gaiden, right? That's locked at 30 on Switch, which is probably manageable, but it doesn't seem ideal for a side-scrolling pixel art game. That's, kind of, as one would expect with ninja-themed games, like, he's going to prioritize quick reflexes and things, isn't it? So, yeah, maybe it'll take a bit of time, for the absolute, like, perfect, kind of case scenario to unfold here. But it's to me, I would be quite alright playing it on the OLED if nothing were to change. It seems okay to me.
Yeah. But yeah, like, so, I don't know. I really love this game. Like, there's a lot of platforming. You've got, like, a dash move that you can do in midair or on the ground. You can traverse terrain very quickly with that dash, so that makes me happy. Like, you're always kind of moving constantly very fast. You've got the grappling hook and everything. You've got double jumps and your wall cling, all of that ninja stuff. And then there's the combat, which I did mention earlier, that there's a few systems, at the same time. So basically, enemies have a life bar that you're trying to whittle down, but they also, at the same time as you're hitting them, you're increasing this white gauge that once it's full, it indicates that you can perform the execution move on them. So what you're trying to do is to maybe, like, not quite kill them and just get that gauge to its full, get that gauge full, and then move on to the next enemy and get their gauge full. And so once you hit L and then R, you just kill like 1, 2, 3, or 4 enemies all at once. And then again, like, you're just hoovering up tons of coins. So that's pretty fun. One of the challenges is that some enemies have armor, and so you have to break that armor before you can get that gauge up. So, your strong attack is going to be good against that, but then also you're unlocking, as you're playing the game, new combos, new moves that also can, like, often they'll call out, like, oh, this is great to get the execution gauge up. So you try to focus on that, on those, when you're fighting a big armored enemy. So it forces you to use a wide variety of moves. Something that I probably should have been playing more with and that I kept forgetting, and like, it was mostly optional until a certain point where it was less optional. There are Nimpo moves, which are, you hold the L button and you press, like, one of the face button, and you can assign one of 8 Nimpo attacks to these buttons. And so each of them, and you can see that in the demo, but, like, each of them have, like, ratings for how much damage they will do, just plain damage to the health bar of the enemies, how much they're going to take down armor, or how much they're going to raise the execution gauge. And so ideally you want to assign to your buttons something, for every situation. Like these enemies I just want to kill as quickly as possible. Okay. You're going to use this move. If you want something that takes down the armor, then you use the other move. Like I feel like the game didn't force me to engage with that all that much until eventually it did, because the bosses were becoming so strong. But it's interesting. I would recommend maybe people to play with that a little bit more than I did. But like it's kind of the game feels so good, just like regular swinging your sword around and killing enemies, jumping around and like avoiding their dashing away from an enemy, dashing back and taking a few quick hits in. Just that feels so good that the game kind of has a hard time to incentivize using other moves that might use these Nimpo moves. They use like I forget what they call them, power cell? Nimpo cells, of course. So you start with 1 and you can get up to 5. And those cells fill up as you hit enemies. So they fill up quite quickly. So you could be using those moves a lot more than I have been. But I felt like you kind of don't need to for most of the game. It's kind of this weird side effect of the game actually being like not super tough. It's that like it proposes a lot of different systems and moves and stuff, and there's not really a real need for any of it ultimately. But it might be something to play around with in the post game. Although I don't think I'm going to be engaging with that. So the post game, I finished everything I found except for one optional boss. But I found everything in the game. I've unlocked, when I cleared the credits, I unlocked the arcade mode, which is basically, I'm going to say it feels a little bit half-cooked. Because it basically tasks you with going through the levels again without the story beats, I guess. But the levels are freaking huge. And the game is not really quite... I don't know, like it's doing a poor job of telling you what actually gives you points and not. Like you can see that, okay, like you're timed and you need to get a certain amount of points. But the coins that you find throughout the levels don't seem to give you more points. Doing execution moves don't seem to give you more points. You always get the same 100 points when you clear like this low-level enemy, no matter how you do it. So yeah, like kind of being flashy with your execution moves is not really the way to score higher. But also it wants you to go and check out like all the chests that contained important power-ups in the story mode, because you find this medallion that seems to give you 1,000 points. So it seems important to go and get them all. But that just means that you're scouring like these huge levels. The story, like, I don't know how many levels there are in this game, maybe like 15, but they're all like very, very large. I would often not complete one before like going to bed. Like I would just get to the next checkpoint and be like, okay, that's enough. And then I would start again the next day. So like these large levels don't really, are not really a good, I don't know. They're not a good option for like an arcade mode like this. Like, I feel like this is something that like Kirby games have understood.
Yes. No, I was just thinking about the Kirby games, the DDD kind of, the campaign or Meta Knight campaigns for some of these
just like
things.
String together like these short bits of, these partial levels that you've played through before. And they're like, yeah, do as well as you can in these levels using these powers, go as fast as possible, kill all the enemies. And, but they don't have you go through the entire levels again.
No, it's an abridged version, isn't it? In a kind of usually quite, especially I think with Triple Deluxe, I seem to remember probably is one of the ones I most played of that sort, which was a DDD post-game kind of mode, and it just felt like it was abridged in some quite smart ways. You know, you still had a lot of the levels and kind of, you know, repurposing like some of those kinds of like, puzzle rooms and stuff, like, so it wasn't like completely, you know, obviating the level design that was there into something that's just a sprint, but it was condensing it in a meaningful way that made it like a nice quick way to kind of revisit the game and stuff. Whereas, it doesn't seem like there's been as much work put into that element of it in this case, which, therefore, would fit the half-baked description.
Yeah. So, a little bit disappointed, but it's just a post-game. I don't know. The main game was so good, and it was a long game in the end, and not especially, you know, it was not full price or anything, so it's, I'm not going to complain. I felt like there was more than enough game in there to satisfy me. I know that there are like 3 DLC levels that are going to come out next year. Suren on the Discord said like, I'm going to wait for the full game to come out. This is a full game. Like, I don't feel like they cut out any kind of part of a full game to serve us just like an incomplete thing. Like, this is the full thing.
What was the famous example of that? Was it like Assassin's Creed 2 or something with the memories missing or whatever? Was that one?
There was something like that, and there was also Azura's Wrath, which had its ending as DLC. So
it's not that. It's what
no. You're getting the ending. You're getting all the levels between the beginning and the end. Like, I'm guessing the 3 new levels are going to be kind of a side story or something, because nothing feels like it's been left out.
God, Azura's Wrath was so bad. So bad. It's just so shameless.
I've been talking about this game for half an hour now, so I'm sorry. We can move on, but I needed to defend the honor of the Ninja Clan, the Shinobi
what?
Ninja Clan.
This is
all the haters, James.
It seems to have reviewed very well from what I've seen.
All the haters you've invented? All right. You know what?
I just don't see anyone actually talking about this game on the Discord or on my Blue Sky.
Well, some of that is probably because of I've been kind of just like, my mind has been blown by the scale of the Silksong, like everything scrambling to get away outside of the event horizon of Silksong, like the fucking things at the start of Transformers the movie getting away from Unicron, like just go to get away. It's gonna eat everything. I can't believe it's just like devastating. Apparently, that to like any kind of mind share of anything that isn't Silksong.
I mean, they're right. Like, there was some pretty good write-up that's come out of that since then. I don't want to go too deep into it because we got one more game to talk about. But basically, a lot of, especially indie games, but not just indie games, a lot of your sales come from people being exposed to content created around the game. Maybe streamers, maybe websites, maybe other outlets covering it. And they're all going to be doing Silksong. So you're not going to get coverage. And then you're not the new hotness anymore. And so, and Silksong is not going to be a short game. That's not going to blow over in a couple days. It could be weeks. And by then the next thing might be out. And that might be then, so you'll never get your moment in the sun. And so, moving just from a practical standpoint, all the money and time you've invested in the project probably makes sense if you felt like a big part of your marketing plan was word of mouth. There are people who have suggested this might have been done just as part of trying to gin up word of mouth, but that really wouldn't do you any good. Like, this is one of those like, your conspiracy theory seems reasonable, but think about it for more than 5 seconds. I am going to make you want my game by making you have to remember my game exists for 2 months, despite the fact that you've probably already forgotten about my game one time, hence my concern. It's like, no, this is a bad plan. It's a bad plan. I I can absolutely see someone coming up with that as a plan, but I can also see everybody else in the room going, hey, idiot. If our game was that memorable, we wouldn't be that worried about it now, would we? But we are. So think about it. People got a lot of things on their head. So yeah, it's a mess. It's a mess. But yeah, this is a big moment that arrived relatively suddenly, but not that suddenly, because we knew it would be out before that Xbox branded handheld PC. They already told us that. We knew that was coming out in October. So like, yes, the date was relatively late announced, but I mean, we had like a 4 or 5 week window we knew it was going to fall in, and it fell in the early part of it. But yeah, honestly, I think Guillaume just wanted to have somebody to be mad at. So he's invented members of our Discord who are denying him Shinobi content. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I just think maybe they haven't pushed this game as hard as they probably should have. But Sega's not the publisher of record, correct?
I don't know actually.
Because they own that franchise, do they not?
Oh, well, yeah, they should. It's part of this. It's part of this broader initiative of bringing back a lot of their old franchises. I mean, I don't know whether in a mascot kind of way, but it is very much like let's remember our legacy IP and you try and get some modern kind of iterations in those for the first time in a long time.
They were the developer. Oh, they are the publisher. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was in because
I'm just seeing like the small Sega, copyright Sega in the bottom left of the title screen.
And I think it's I always you always navigated the eShop by like having put shortcuts to a publisher as my way of coping with its not high degree of usability. And I'm pretty sure it was in with the rest of the Sega stuff when I was checking, because they've got some sort of games on discount now, and I think it was in there.
The eShop was perfectly usable. You were just trying to use it for the wrong use case, which is to find games you want to play.
Yes. I mean, to check games that I might care about if they're on sale, rather than say, well, yes, I mean, there's a lot of things that are on sale, but...
I mean, like, so Lizard Cube, obviously, at this point, we realize are big, like, Sega nuts, and they've made Streets of Rage 4 and this game with Sega or for Sega, whatever. And, but, like, there's a whole level, like, there's a city level in this game, and all the backgrounds are, like, big signs, posters, ads showing, like, various, Sega things and like advertising the Mega Drive or whatever, and at some point there's like this giant poster, I don't know, just saying like Legends, and you've got 3 dudes on it who I'm sure are Sega figures that I can't name or recognize, but I'm assuming they have something to do with the Shinobi franchise in some way.
The irony is killing me.
But yeah, so it's a Sega game, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah, and like I said, part of a broader initiative, actually, because I mean, obviously Streets of Rage 4 is somewhat similar, but it was kind of on an island, whereas this is a part of but was there like 5 trailers initially, I think, that they showed, like just little glimpses of, and very early on it was like, that looks like Lizard Cube, and that looks like one to actually keep track of, like that it might be really good, and like I say, it has reviewed very well. I imagine I'll be playing it before too long in some capacity. Hopefully some good stuff will come out of some of the others as well, because I'm sure there's potential there. But this was always, the pedigree behind this suggested that it was well worth, tracking, and it's proven so far.
Cool. All right, Greg, take us home.
Sure, yeah. Well, I guess the first thing I should say very quickly, because it was nothing really that changed anything about the general character of what I said about it last week. I did finish off the Kirby and the Forgotten Land Star-Crossed World, Switch 2 Edition updates stuff. I had a few levels to go and the kind of final boss, and so I've polished those off. certainly, final boss wise, if you've played enough Kirby games, I think you have certain expectations of what they should be. This particular one, I think, lived up to that, so suitably kind of, just bizarrely kind of grandiose, I guess is what I would say. So it certainly didn't disappoint in that regard, and, very quickly just mopped up and got all the, hidden starries, as they're called in this case, rather than Waddle Dees, but basically the same thing. It wasn't terribly difficult, and also had amassed enough currency to fill in the gaps with the missing toy collection, the figures from the Gashapon machine and all that. So the last thing I actually had to do to get 100% on my sort of existing Kirby in the Forgotten Land save file was the Tilt and Tumble game. I hadn't actually done all the ones on that because there's you unlock harder versions as well where they add enemies and stuff, and I'd never done that apparently. Not really terrible shock. I mean, they're quite separate from the rest of them. But I thought, you know what, I'm this close to the 100% mark, I may as well do it. And actually, what I find far, far simpler to do rather than actually holding it in my hands was doing it with my Switch 2 GameCube controller that has the gyro in it, and play it on TV. I've had a much more fine degree of control holding that GameCube controller gyro than I did doing it with the system. I was just overcompensating and messing it up like I was like, bloody hell, I'm never going to be able to do this. But then doing it that way on the television, all of a sudden it wasn't so tricky. And so, yeah, that was kind of polished off something that had been left over from the original campaign, and yeah, thoroughly enjoyed what was there, the new stuff. Like I said, nothing out of character from the original game. Fits in very nicely, I would have thought, for people that are playing it all for the first time. Maybe a little bit too much overlap, as I said last week, with certain mini bosses and stuff, but it's more of something that I thought was really nicely put together, very enjoyable. So no complaints from me in that regard, especially when you think of these sorts of the kind of pricing scheme that they've set out for. I guess it's kind of like, because the Zelda upgrades are like $10 if you're not getting them as part of the expansion pack, right? So it's kind of like $10 for the technical upgrade and $10 for the actual content. I think it's a pretty easy sell if you're thinking of it as a $10 proposition. And so really, I guess, again, like I said, it's even easier if you're thinking about going back and playing and enjoying the technical upgrades on the on the existing content. And I think I will at some point. So, as I mentioned before, so. Yeah, that was enjoyable stuff. I did mention playing Chibi-Robo on the GameCube service as well last week, and I've rolled the credits on that. It's not like I've done everything. One of the features of Chibi-Robo essentially is that you get stickers for tying off certain quest lines, rather like getting certain masks in Majora's Mask. It does, there's quite a lot of overlap with Majora's Mask for me. There's kind of 3 kind of games, round about the turn of the century, from Nintendo that it kind of reminds you of a lot. You could think of Majora's Mask in terms of the way that you're solving people's problems a lot, and these quirky characters with their sort of interlocking dramas, and you sort of working to resolve those. Then there's Animal Crossing in terms of some of that, chores and, looking after somewhere and making it look nicer. And then there's Pikmin in terms of the sort of limited exploration, right? You've got a bit of a time pressure in this case. You operate as Chibi-Robo both during the day and the night time, but it cuts off after a certain length of time, and you can upgrade that length of time in the little shop pretty at a modest cost and pretty quickly. But still, it kind of, especially alongside the mobility limitations that are kind of very apparent early on, it's a little bit like Pikmin in the sense that you're kind of rushing to kind of accomplish what you can in a shorter period of time without it being quite as severe. There's a lot more kind of easygoing, than certainly the original Pikmin was. But I feel like it's a cocktail, a really interesting cocktail of all those things, earlier GameCube games, because it was from the, Chibi-Robo's from really the end of the GameCube's run. But then, with its own aesthetic and its storyline, is very much his own thing. And really, even the Chibi-Robo subsequent games have not really kind of mined the same kind of vein since, I think the one game that really is a most direct follow-up, both narratively and in gameplay terms, is the one that did not get localized. That's the, I think it roughly translates something like Big Rich Sweep on the DS. So, Park Patrol got localized as a Walmart exclusive in the US. Right. I don't think it came out in Europe at all, did it? I forget. But
because I had to send copies to Europe for the NWR staffers.
Exactly, because it didn't, and it barely came out in America, right? So,
yeah,
it was struggling there, and that was a little bit of a different take. I haven't played it, but, it was about gardening. Essentially was more of the focus rather than, the domestic stuff in this game. And then, so the follow-up, in a sense, the next DS game, which was the Big Rich Sweep one, that sounds like it was, and from everything I've ever seen, seems like it was much more of a, let's do the original game, or something like the original game as best we can on DS. And we didn't get that. No one got it outside of Japan, I should say. So, that's kind of a shame, because I do really like this unique kind of mix of elements that Chibi-Robo represents. And, obviously after that DS game, it's, the photo finder, Ziplash, I played Ziplash. It's for the most part, it's just a very unremarkable platformer that probably does benefit from the fact that I've played Chibi-Robo and I like the character design, the sound design, some of the callbacks and stuff, but it doesn't change the fact that it's an unremarkable side-scrolling platformer that doesn't really, share terribly much of the substance of the series. So, it's a shame that it's clearly someone at Nintendo believed in the appeal of the character to want to, put it in more games, because I'm sure it wasn't a huge hit coming at the end of the GameCube's life. But for me, I first played it back on Wii, in the new Play Control game that was exclusive to Japan, which, obviously Wii being a GameCube, it wasn't drastically reinventing the game or anything. It was mostly just, remapping the controls to the Wii remote and the nunchuck. Some gesture stuff in there, which is, it can be problematic, but I don't think it really was back then, because, it was limited. It wasn't like it was for stuff that you needed to do, with a high degree of, precise timing or anything like that. It's just like, flick to toss the stuff in the trash can or whatever, stuff that doesn't particularly matter. Maybe you prefer to do a button press, but that's fine. And then the one thing it had, I think, is a little bit of a loss playing on the Switch 2 service here for GameCube Classics, is the widescreen, because I do think it's part of the kind of the whole essence of the game is creating this panorama out of the mundane, right? It's a house with, a kitchen and a living room and some sweet wrappers and, bits of paper and paw prints, muddy paw prints to clean up. It's the most domestic, ordinary things in the world. But because you're this tiny little robot, it's this big scale, right? And everything feels gigantic and stuff. And the widescreen kind of helped sell that, I think, on Wii. And of course, because this is the GameCube game, a lot of GameCubes, some did have widescreen modes, like F-Zero GX does. We've talked about that before, but a lot didn't. A lot of it was just progressive scan, right? 480p. And so, with that, you're losing a bit of that sort of sense of scale. But there's the flip side to it is, because these games are upscaled on Switch 2, they're putting at a higher resolution. I think this benefits from that quite a lot, because especially when you get up somewhere high and you kind of got a big view of everything, the whole view of a room. And that is, verticality is a huge part of Chibi-Robo, exploring these environments and getting up high. And you can see it all, like the fact that now everything is a lot clearer, because it's output at a higher resolution, it helps sell the fact that it's like, yes, I'm seeing everything, all the different aspects of the room, all the different objects that are, up on these shelves, or, those weird little doors that have, you go to some other, like, citrus soft dimension that has money in it. I mean, it's very strange, but all these things are visible at once, and they're not just blurring together, the way that they might have done, at 480 or whatever. So, it's a bit of swings and roundabouts with that, but especially because it doesn't rely on detail, the texture work and all that. It's like, yeah, you could say it's not very sophisticated, and I guess it isn't. But when you upscale it, it ends up taking on a kind of clean look, right? A clean, stylized look that functions relatively well at that higher resolution. So, I really got absorbed back in it, and it was nice to be able to play it, just directly in English rather than having to consult, game script or translation guide the way I did, 16 years ago, I believe it was.
Wow.
That Wii Play Control version.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just I remembered a lot of it, actually. I think it was a testament to how much that game's, sort of script and narrative stayed with me. As much of it did stay with me over a 16-year period. But of course, there was a lot that I didn't remember, or indeed a lot that I may not have really absorbed playing it, in that weird way where it's the Japanese version and you're kind of having to look things up, all that years ago. So yeah, I thought this was really, really cool to go back to. And I think the biggest thing of all, even though I played it obviously on Wii back then and people would have played it on GameCube back then, it is so suited, much more suited to portable play. The nature of it, but by design, like repetitive, right? And you're kind of doing these chores and stuff. And again, that Animal Crossing kind of parallel I talked about. For me, I played City Folk on Wii, right? And versus like playing the portable ones. It's not that I didn't enjoy it on, like I said, I enjoyed Chibi-Robo 16 years ago on a console. I enjoyed Animal Crossing a similar length of time ago on a console, but portable play is so much more suitable, right? And this really benefits from that, the way that you can just kind of kick back a bit and just kind of do some stuff. And, even if you are just doing some of the same things over again, you're always kind of just making those happy point totals go up and, working towards the next like battery upgrade that builds on your mobility. And yeah, some of those kinds of quest lines, essentially, where you're solving people's problems, you sometimes can be like, oh, God, well, what is it again I have to do? Or, to trigger like the next kind of part of that sequence or whatever. But generally, if you kind of just muck about doing your chores for long enough, you'll stumble into and explore around, which is really, what it's about, pushing the boundaries of how much you can explore as you upgrade the character's mobility. And, there's even a little bit of Metroid in that regard. You will eventually just trigger something to pursue. And then, all these wacky kind of little side stories involving the various characters in the house. I don't really want to give anything away, because I think that's what's one of the principal virtues of the game, is discovering just the weird places that these little stories go and how they kind of tie back together and whatnot. So yeah, really, really enjoyable experience, that one. And hopefully more people will check it out, because it's certainly like a lot lower profile than stuff like Soul Calibur 2 and, Wind Waker. But I feel like that should make it one of the more attractive titles in a way, because it's not something you've played like a million times and already know really well.
Yeah, I don't have access to it right now because I don't have the expansion pack. It's if there's a few more weird GameCube games that make their way on there, I'm thinking like a Cubivore. That might be the breaking point for me. Not necessarily explicitly Cubivore, but
sure, yeah. The ones we know about, it would be a massive shock if we're not about to get Super Mario Sunshine and then Luigi's Mansion for September and October. So, I mean, I don't know anything, or that's just, you're just surmising from the time.
Yeah,
of year,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I get what you're saying.
It's very likely that those, with the Mario anniversary, the 40th, and, you know, the kind of end of summer, and then, spooky season for Luigi, like, seems very likely. So nothing too out of the ordinary there. But then after that, what are you left with the ones they've announced? Well, mainly Fire Emblem and Pokemon. Those will probably be somewhere next after that. So, you know, and then at some point, presumably when they've worked through those, they'll actually announce another kind of set, perhaps.
Or they'll just stop like they have on the Game Boy.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. We actually did have, for the first time in a while, just yesterday or whatever, we actually had the first kind of thing that felt like it wasn't just aimed at Switch 2 owners. I know Mario Paint is not exclusive to Switch owners, but the emphasis on mouse functionality, even though, yes, you can use a USB mouse and play on Switch 1, like, it kind of felt like even that was, alongside all those GameCube releases, was just like, basically for months now, since June, you know, like, it had been kind of blanked. And then eventually we get the release of Forsaken 64 on the mature part of the Nintendo 64 Nintendo Classics offering. And then in Japan they had Magical Vacation, an early Brownie Brown developed GBA game. Some really nice pixel art in that game, actually, looking at the trailer for it. It's only something
it's beautiful,
it's only something I ever really knew by name, you know, like, remember, he was a Japan exclusive, you know, that first year the GBA, kind of knew about it, but not really anything of the substance of it, or saw, like, a lot of screenshots of it, certainly not video back then. And
I think the only thing we got
really
was
nice.
Star Sign for the DS?
Yeah, Star Sign was on DS as sort of sequel. That did get localized, and that was more like, it wasn't as early in the DS's life. I think it was maybe like 2006. By this, it was like a lot of games coming out. It was a lot easier for stuff to get lost in the shuffle at that point.
But you mentioned Forsaken. We were talking about Forsaken before we started recording, and how people in the Discord were like, what the hell even is that? Which is an understandable reaction, because this is one of those, Paul Marketing has been in Photoshop and has created a terrible cover image, at least in North America, where it's just a woman with the logo tattooed on half her face.
And the single tear rolling down the
single tear,
cheek, because it's like, the idea is like post-apocalyptic, right? So like she'd been in like the Breath of the Wild, like sleepy thing or whatever, and just woken up and like, oh my, you know, did you got back called Chuck Heston? You maniacs, you blew it up or whatever. Weird. It's got absolutely nothing to do with the rest, because the game is all about being, you know, in these underground passages, basically.
In a fighter that can move in 3-dimensional space.
That's it. In a fighter, you're on a flying motorcycle, which I always thought was the stupidest downgrade from
It's not a motorcycle if it's flying. It's like... Like, motorcycle has a very...
bike, I don't know.
A speed bike, whatever it is, but
it's so dumb.
But you don't have protection of that thing. You're riding on it like you would a motorcycle.
I remember this game because it actually got it was a fairly big launch. They spent a lot of money on this game. They pushed it hard, and I remember distinctly the fucking KB Toys at the mall had a sign out for it in the front for like 4 months before it launched. Forsaken is coming. But well, wait till you hear what was in that sign a year earlier. War Gods. So
but this is the thing, isn't it? Is like, you know, we've talked about it before. The Dream Team, right? Nintendo's.
Oh yeah.
This is the strategy they
War
pursued.
Gods Dream Team.
We've got, you know, we're gonna basically, I think, really taking, you know, their grip on the Japanese market for granted, because it was so very tight in the Super Famicom era. You know, it was much tighter there than it was in America and Europe, right? So it's like, we've got that locked down. What we need to focus on is like cultivating this small cadre of like Western developers that are going to have preferred access to the hardware, and, you know, we're going to like market their games, and, you know, having fewer developers is a good thing, right? We've carefully curated who our development partners are, rather than, it's just like, it's easy. It's cheaper and easier to make games for CD format, so lots more developers want to work on PlayStation, basically. But the point is, Acclaim stuff got a big push, because they were in that inner circle, right? So that's why Turok was such a big deal. That's why Turok and Shadow Man and this are on the service now, because they were relatively high profile games back then. And also, like, from an IP point of view, they are gettable now, right? So in this particular case, I believe it is Night Dive, the many first person shooter remasters who are owned now by Atari. Is that right? Or is it somebody else? Is it Digital Eclipse that are owned by Atari? I forget. Atari,
Digital Eclipse is owned by Atari.
Digital Eclipse are, yeah.
Yeah, I guess maybe they just work with Atari a fair bit, but it's like, that's the side of the street Atari is trying to work now, is the games history stuff, naturally, I guess. But, with Night Dive, they've done all these sorts of remasters of, various, Exhumed, and, they just recently did Hexen, right? And a Heretic and all this stuff. But they've actually done one for Forsaken that isn't on Switch for some reason, right? Because a lot of the remasters are on Switch, right? But I don't think the Forsaken one is, for some reason. But now we've got, and of course, the Turok games, they did the remasters of those, and they're on the NSO as well. So it's a weird kind of thing where, some of them have like gone in different orders as well. Like maybe that Forsaken remaster will show up one day, but we've got it on the expansion pack anyway. And I certainly remember it being covered quite a lot in the magazines here, not least because I think it was developed by Iguana UK. So that's Acclaim's sort of development houses. Iguana in America were responsible for doing Turok and like Turok 2 and so forth, right? So Iguana UK, I guess, was some sort of spin-off operation or whatever, and they are credited as the developers on Forsaken 64, and as a result, it wasn't a shock that it got quite a lot of coverage and, dare I suggest, quite favourable reviews as a result of that in our magazines. But, this was 98, this was a time when you could, I could look on the internet and actually read reviews that were not penned by people in Britain, and it reviewed quite well outside of Britain, as I recall. It was like one of these things that I think what you remember from it at the time, and this was not something I had a lot of experience with, but it was owed a lot to Descent, right? So,
definitely.
That it was basically trying to do that kind of experience, and I did get to play it a bit, and it didn't ever really click with me, I have to say. It just didn't. I think some of it, I always wondered whether some of it was just better with a mouse and keyboard, that was really, the way it should be played, and the N64 controller, I don't know if it was like uniquely bad relative to controllers at the time.
It's just not what that game was designed for. But
it's not mouse and keyboard, is it, right? So that was part of it. The other part of it, and again, this is based on decades old memory, so take it for what it's worth, but it always kind of felt to me like that it has a single player component as well as multiplayer, but there was two. I played a lot of multiplayer with my friends at the time, GoldenEye, Turok 2 even, obviously Diddy Kong Racing, Mario Kart, all the Smash Brothers later, all the good stuff. But it didn't really catch on in the multiplayer sets, because I think trying to do it split screen was just no chance. Like, it was difficult enough to pass stuff without the split screen, right? Because stuff blended together with the background. You're just like killing enemies. You couldn't really see that well. And obviously, you're sort of free floating in 360 space. It's just like, it's confusing. And then you split that on TVs we generally had like decent sized TVs for the day, but they're still way smaller than what you would be getting later when you got to the post CRT era. So that didn't really work on a multiplayer level. And then single player, it never really felt like the levels were particularly like designed to me the way that, a single player campaign, it just kind of felt like you were doing stuff in arenas by yourself. that were, not particularly kind of designed for single. That may be unfair. This is a vague impression from decades ago, but it's just like, you'd have stuff like in Perfect Dark where you had like multiplayer challenges you could just kind of do by yourself.
Right.
Like the single player game just kind of felt like a game of that, even though obviously that's, Perfect Dark didn't exist yet, but you get the idea. Like, so yeah, I didn't really take to it, but it was, especially based on what you said with the marketing, James, it was a game of some significance in the N64 release schedule and, the reception that it got at the time. So it's not that bonkers that it's and there was one other thing. The fact that this would be coming was kind of tipped by certain people that noticed things in the video. Unbelievable, like how observant people can be with these. But there was, I think it was in May that there was, in the pre-Switch 2, it was sort of showing off a video of like new features for the N64 app, the CRT filter and the rewind. And there's a moment where, like, where it would be where you'd bring up the menu to change, like, to switch that CRT filter on. And there's blurred out box arts in the background. And I think the thing that was very quickly recognized in that was the Smash Brothers box art, which, of course, people would know. It's Smash Brothers, right? But then, like, people say, okay, well, we could actually think we could see a bunch of other box arts that are blurred out that don't belong to games that are currently on the list. And Forsaken 64 was one of them, along with, I believe, Donkey Kong 64, Glover, I believe is another one. Maybe we've got those to look forward to. Although it's worth mentioning, the curious thing about that, of course, is, as I've already said, Forsaken 64 is on the Mature app, which is separate from stuff like Donkey Kong or Smash Brothers that wasn't rated mature at the time. So it's a little strange that they would ever be together, but I guess it could be like a debug mode that they're capturing this footage from, where all the N64 games are, kind of just pooled together. Whatever the case, a lot of people were not surprised that this emerged because of that, because in that sense, that very peculiar box art, as we mentioned, with the single tier, that is, I guess the closest thing I can liken it to is that stupid Phalanx box art on Super Nintendo, where it is just like, who thought this had anything to do with the content? How is this
stupid?
How is this synergistic with the content of the game? Which, for the record, I believe it did not have that box art in Britain. In Britain, It was just a big scorched earth with the letter F in it and Forsaken underneath.
Good Lord. Look, why don't we talk about Forsaken? Why are we talking about this game?
Besides
because we're going to play the music? Yeah.
Yes, because we did have a very, very late
I was trying to set us up.
So, yes, we did have a requested very late, indeed, from, I guess, it was a developers who only went up like a matter of 24 hours ago or whatever it was, from Chaos RSS about the Forsaken 64 and the music contained within it. As we already mentioned, it was developed in Britain. And so, this is something that was very much picked up on here because, as Chaos RSS says, Forsaken 64 was added to the Switch N64 Classics app this week, a game I'd never heard about. However, the trailer featured some cool music, so we checked out the soundtrack and discovered it contained several slightly off-kilter takes on 90s drum and bass and trip-hop. Feels exceedingly British in the spirit of Orbital and such. Turns out one of the two composers behind music at The Swarm is one Dominic Glynn, who's done a lot of compositions for film and TV, such as an arrangement of the Doctor Who theme and work which is included in series like The Simpsons and Red Dwarf. It seems like the PC version of Forsaken had some songs, but this one is definitely some more songs, but this one is definitely in the N64 release. No worries if you've got something else picked out already, but just figured out this would be the only time in history Forsaken 64 would be somewhat relevant. Love the show, Pony. So, yeah, I mean, in that sense, it's good pitch from Chaos RSS. I do feel like we kind of have to close with it. But, their instincts were not wrong. I did have something picked out as well. And I think what I'm going to do is, if we have done this before, is I'm going to cop out and do both. Because, as has been mentioned, we are inside. We have failed to escape the event horizon of Silksong. So we kind of had felt like we had to have some closing music recognition of that as well. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to start with the track from Forsaken 64, which is called Condemned. And then we're going to move into what I felt was a very logical choice for the sort of selection from the original Hollow Knight, which is Hornet's theme, given, you know, what Silksong is. So it should be quite a contrast, although I guess like Hornet's theme is not as like kind of melancholy as a lot of the stuff in Hollow Knight. It's a bit more stirring, you know, because it's character kind of motif rather than the more atmospheric kind of stuff. But yeah, this is going to be one of the bigger bits of musical whiplash that you could engineer in this setting.
All right. Well, on that, it is time for us to go. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.